Day, welcome to another episode of Pacific Matters. We've got a great show for you today. First up, we wanted to introduce you to a teenage pilot, a student pilot who's making his mark across the region, traveling to Rota and Saipan cross-country all on his own. We got to meet up with Lawrence Limtiaco right before he took flight over the weekend. Here's more. Lawrence Limtiaco dreamt of flying since he was 12 years old.
My grandfather was a pilot when he was younger. He kind of inspired me to do it, and when I was just a little kid, I used to go and watch the planes at the airport land.
He's 16 now and doesn't have to just watch planes take flight anymore. He can fly one himself. On his second solo cross-country flight from Guam to Saipan and Rota, Lawrence sees the beauty of home from his seat on a Cessna 172.
Once I'm in cruise, I just take my hands off the controls, let the plane level itself out, and I just look around, look at the beauty of the islands, especially Saipan, Rota, and Tinian, and Guam from a distance. They all look very nice, especially from the air. You can see all the beaches and the houses. It's really nice up there.
As he's flying over the vast blue Pacific Ocean alone, he's hard at work, prepared for every scenario after hours of studying and practice.
He has to be able to fly by himself. On his first solo, he has to be able to land safely, so we did that. Then just locally fly to the south side, able to communicate with air traffic control and come back. And then lastly is me and him will fly 3 cross countries, and by the last one, he could do everything on his own.
He's a year away from getting his private pilot's license, and his instructor has witnessed firsthand his courage in the air.
He doesn't get scared, so he knows if he does it this way, it's okay. Even if he did something wrong, he won't get sad about it or scared about it. He'll learn from it. So that is really the challenging part, especially when you're flying at such a young age. People think there's so many things could go wrong, but he takes that and learns from it.
His parents proudly and nervously watching him take off each time.
We are a family that come from kind of extreme sports with the motocross racing, and he does jump his bike, and it's kind of like flying because he is in the air. But of course, he's never 7,500 feet in the air.
And when he isn't soaring up there, he's at home practicing on a flight simulator. They've seen him grow as a student at Father Duenas, where he takes part in NJROTC. He's also a leader of the U.S. Navy Sea Cadets Corps and a flight commander for the Bravo flight at the Anderson Air Force Base Civil Air Patrol Wing.
He flew the airplane before he even got his permit, driving his car, driving a car. So
yeah.
That was a big deal, right? Because he got to fly solo before he even got his permit, his license.
And his sights are set on attending the U.S. Naval Academy.
I really like being in the air, really like going fast. So I think being a fighter pilot, you get the best of both worlds. You get to go in the air and go really fast.
On his second solo flight, for the first time, he landed on Saipan to meet Sinamay Governor Ralph Torres, who congratulated him on his journey. The governor describing Lawrence's talent as remarkable. His parents one day hope to be in the passenger seat next to their son at the wheel, and his father wants to learn how to fly from his son. For now, they're putting their faith in God and a familiar presence.
Thank God for keeping him safe, and of course my father looking down at him, possibly the co-pilot. So emotional time to watch him fly and accomplish what he's said he's wanting to do.
We want to thank Lawrence and his family for allowing us to be there to capture his pre-flight check and also him taking off from Guam to Saipan. And next up here on Pacific Matters, stay tuned. We're meeting 2 political figures who are making history in the Sinamay. Welcome back. In our next few stories, you'll get to meet Representative Tina Sablan and Representative Leila Staffler in Saipan, these 2 women making history in the NMI, running for governor and lieutenant governor. Here's more.
The Sublime Staffler administration will put education, healthcare, and infrastructure development front and center in our platform.
The history-making female ticket for governor and lieutenant governor in the NMI making their first joint appearance today at a press conference, throwing their pitch for the executive seat.
I feel with the right leadership, it always comes from the top. Your culture, your work culture, your school culture, it comes from the top.
The Sablon Staffler ticket wanting to set the tone for their campaign. However, the atmosphere they're running in is both historic and polarized. The lawmakers voted to impeach Governor Torres, who is seeking re-election, and his lieutenant governor, Arnold Palacios, also announced his run for governor. But they're hoping to turn a new page and set a new standard.
What has set some of us apart, and what I'm committed to doing, is reporting our contributions, the donations that we receive before election time. Because right now, and this is something that actually we talked about changing in the law, is right now candidates only have to report after election, and we think it's really important for the sake of transparency for everybody to know, who all your major donors are, right? And I challenge the other teams to do the same.
And in that work, I've worked with a lot of students, young people, and families especially. And so I wanted to try and do this kind of work and help more families.
That was local House Representative Layla Staffler on the link in November. Overnight, she was announced as the Democratic Party nominee for Lieutenant Governor alongside Representative Tina Sablon, the former educator from Tinian, sealing the ticket for an already charged election season. In a previous interview on the link, Sablon shared what she wants in a running mate.
Say that I'm looking for someone who shares similar values and shares a similar vision. I worked really hard with my Democratic colleagues to help write our platform that lays out the vision and the values of the party and our agenda for policy going forward.
And the path forward already proving to be rocky. Some Democrats on Rhoda recently expressed their support for the independent Republican ticket for sitting Lieutenant Governor Arnold Palacios and Mayor David Apatang. It's a crowded field with a Senate impeachment trial looming for Governor Ralph Torres, who's running for re-election with Senator Vinnie Sablon. However, history already being made with Democrats Sablon and Staffler making the first female gubernatorial ticket in the NMI. And when we come back, we have a special feature from the KUAM Podcast Network. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In our next segment, we'll share part of our video podcast that we're launching on the KUAM Podcast Network that we'll share on the show every other month. It's called From the Files. We recap, rewind, and remember the past 65 years of coverage at KUAM, some of the major events that have happened in our region's history. And first, we take a deep dive into the major typhoons that made landfall right here on Guam. Welcome to From the Files. We reach into our archives to recap, rewind, and remember headlines from the past 65 years of KUAM. In this episode, we're digging into our files, taking a look at typhoons that devastated our region. We'll bring you the sights and sounds from Typhoon Omar in 1992, Typhoon Paka in 1997, and Typhoon Sataan in 2002.
Typhoon Omar not only wreaked havoc with our lives, but also the many thousands of visitors who happened to be here when the storm struck.
There is the immediate cost of rebuilding, of course, what Omar destroyed, but there's also a long-term toll on what's been the island's bread and butter.
Omar turned the bustling Tumon tourist mecca into a virtual ghost town, and the tourism industry is just now getting back on its feet.
Typhoon Omar made landfall in 1992. Nestor Lecanto and Ginger Cruz anchored from in the field, examining the economic crisis that followed. Reporter Patrick McMurtry saw some of the devastating damage.
Thousands of homeowners share a common task, rebuilding what Omar tore down. The typhoon damaged an estimated 4,000 homes, destroying over 1,000 of them. The initial reaction of most of the people facing the enormous challenge of rebuilding their homes was positive. Federal officials credit this to Guam's vast experience in rebuilding after typhoons. The first chore, clearing debris. The second, apply for federal aid, and when the money starts coming in, reconstruction begins. Many of those affected by the storm apply for Small Business Administration loans, and the lead man for the SBA, John Brenner, says both the pace of applications and processing have been on the fast track.
Say some of the smaller loans, some of our unsecured loans they go very fast. As a matter of fact, of the applications we've received, we already have approvals that are back in Sacramento, and the latest word I had is we have funding on them already. So we're just waiting for some word of when, within the next week, when we're going to be able to start doing some disbursement on some of the smaller loans.
Brenner says the number of applications handed out by the SBA after Omar surpasses the number of apps handed following Typhoon Pamela in 1976. That means a lot of people will be building or rebuilding in the coming months. But what about the people left homeless after their rental units were destroyed? That question will likely plague the ad administration for a long, long time. One suggestion is to build a large apartment complex.
Do that, what the governor is proposing, and again we have strong legislative support on this, is that another area be turned over to the Guam Housing Corporation. Guam Housing Corporation will use its own financing ability to erect an apartment structure of a minimum of 200 units, and these will be immediately put on the rental market, and again the program will be set up so that for those who are lower income, Section 8 assistance will be available.
That may be a short-term solution, but could to be a long-term housing project no better than a ghetto. Still, it's one unique solution lawmakers will consider. A grassroots movement gathering steam would have the government build a lot of the Lockwood homes that came through Omar unscathed. Besides being durable, the homes can, at least according to the builder, be put up in 2 weeks.
And some residents give back while building back. In this next story from our 1993 rebroadcast, KUAM takes a look back at some of the relief efforts, many of those in the community serving for the greater good.
The outpouring of support to help those hurt by Omar was perhaps among the best in the world. In 3 weeks, the people of Guam gave $1 million to the effort, not counting all the other little gestures of kindness that made life easier for all of us.
The majority of them, they're very generous. Some there's no response. They just nod their head no, or they just leave.
We're trying our best to make them as much typhoon-proof as possible, but still, we're not going to guarantee it because they are not concrete.
His name is Omar, just like the storm. He eats in fury, too. His favorite food is crispy bills, 1,000 thin and new. He's trained to stay right by your side until the job gets done. Please give and share as best you can for the American Red Cross Fund.
We saw this an antenna today that had toppled onto a car, and it was a rather pretty extravagant hood ornament for the size of the car. Kind of crushed the hood and the roof right into the tires.
Well, we're just trying to keep the public moving, because of the lights have been out. We want to help GPD control the traffic moving. That way you have less accidents. So it's like anybody, you entertain them, they're in a good mood, they keep moving. They don't get frustrated. When you get frustrated drivers, you get careless drivers.
And we'll have more from the Files after the break. Welcome back. Here's more from our From the Files podcast. 5 years later, our files show images of Typhoon Paka, which ripped through Guam in 1997.
These images of Typhoon Paka ripping its way through Guam is now giving way to pictures like these. Although it's been 5 days since the storm slammed into our island, recovery efforts are only just beginning. Islanders are still waiting for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to give them money to recover. Here is just a handful of more than 200 members affected on Guam. Ever since Typhoon Paka damaged equipment at Guam International Airport, flying people into Guam has been slow.
Well, that, of course, has been our primary problem, the inability to get the people here. We have the people waiting to come, but we can't get them in.
Newton says it will be another 7 to 10 days before disaster recovery centers are set up. In addition to those,
we have what's going to be called a teleregistration assistance line, which starting tomorrow, I believe, and we'll have more information later today on that, people will be able to call beginning tomorrow a number, and they can apply for assistance by calling that phone number.
The organization will not be releasing that number until the system is activated. Meanwhile, FEMA is not the only agency working to put Guam residents back on their feet again. The Salvation Army has been helping out since day one. But with 100 mouths to feed every day, Captain Dave Harmon says supplies are running out.
We have exhausted our supply of pantry food. That's groceries that we give out to have cooked. So we're restocking on that, and we'll be be going on that again early in the new week.
Starting tomorrow, the organization will begin handing out free clothes to victims. You'll need a written statement from a mayor, priest, or government official saying you need help. And for those of you who are lucky to have escaped Paka relatively unscathed,
whatever the community or the public can do to help provide resources, whether it's financial or in-kind donations, we would really appreciate their KUAM in helping to see that the families who have been greatly affected by this typhoon have those resources.
And in 2002, Tataan made landfall.
Condition 1 is 12 hours out. And that is actually going to indicate wind of about 58 to 60 miles per hour. Damaging winds 58 to 60 miles per hour.
Its eye passed northern Guam and brought heavy rain and wind. Here's our report on the aftermath.
Even during the midst of the second wave of Typhoon Satsaan, residents in the central part of the island were taking stock of the damage to their homes and trying their best to clean and repair their land. Flooding and down power and telephone lines in the downtown areas of Agana and parts of Tamuning stall drivers as they make their way through the streets checking out the devastation. With sustaining winds at 115 miles per hour with stronger gusts, vehicles here in Tamuning were thrown as if they were toy cars. The scene seems so unreal, considering many people never truly expected the storm to hit so hard. That's especially true for the vendors who had set up shop at this year's Liberation Carnival, who may not have heeded the warnings to secure their sites and have now lost nearly everything. The light materials used to construct their booths were no match for Satsaan's fury. The destruction at the Tizan site is heart-wrenching, considering the time, money, and hard work the vendors put into their temporary businesses. Tin, lumber, and even merchandise, food, and prizes were strewn about, much of it damaged beyond repair. For Johanna, it was crushing to find her booth destroyed, as she and her family have sunk a great deal of their savings into the carnival site, especially as it was their first time setting up a booth.
Yes, this is my first time. It was actually my sister-in-law. She left off island, so she handed it down to me. And this is my very first time. It was doing good in the beginning.
Johanna and her family, like most of the other vendors, will now have to pick through the rubble, trying to save what they can, trying to recoup their losses.
Just try and salvage everything as much as I can. At least our birds are still there. Stuffed animals, at least are hard to find here, especially the island.
The amount of money lost by both the vendors and the government of Guam through the annihilation of the carnival cannot even be measured yet. Department of Administration Acting Director Cliff Guzman.
It's devastating, definitely. I mean, a lot of people put a lot of hard work into this, and there was a lot of high expectations and hopes that it would be a good thing for us. Nobody expected this, and I don't know what we're going to do now. I'm going to have to talk to the vendors. Some of them are out here picking up some stuff and seeing what they can salvage. And it'll be up to the vendors what they want to do, and we'll have to balance that against the cost of cranking it up if we do that.
Here at Tizan, I'm standing at what was, until yesterday, the site of the Liberation Carnival, as usual, slated to carry on throughout the summer. However, until assessments can be made, it's unsure at this point whether the carnival will even resume, as this site, like so many others, is utterly devastated. Reporting from Tizan for KUAM News, I'm Yana Person.
These images from our files seared in our island's memories, a reminder of what still might be brewing in our future. You're listening to From the Files. I'm Tomas Manglona. Stay tuned for more episodes from our KUAM podcast network. All right, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Pacific Matters. We'll see you right here next week.